Welcome again to the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. My name is Frank DiMora, and this is the YouTube where I connect Bible prophecy and current events to show you what Jesus had to say and what the prophets in the Old Testament had to say about the end times just before Jesus came back is actually taking place. And many of you don't read the Bible, and so you won't know what the Lord wants you to understand about these last days. And you definitely don't want to be caught like the Pharisees and the Sadducees who were facing Jesus at his first coming, where they couldn't even realize the signs that Jesus was standing before him, fulfilling prophecies of the Old Testament. And so what I'm going to be doing today, I'm going to be giving you, hopefully, I was going to try to put this video into one video, but because of the information, I might have to go into two videos for this. So for those of you who are familiar with my website, what I'm going to do is post this at the YouTube, and then I'm going to put all the information that you need to see at my website, which you can get there by going to www.bibleprophecyman.com. And once you're there, not only will you read the information today, but at the very top you'll see a picture of the cover of my book, the front and back covers, and right below it is a link. You click to that link and it'll take you to a free download of my book. And the latest book that I put out was February 2nd of this year. I'm going to be talking about some news about what's taking place in Egypt today. I covered a little bit about this yesterday, but this is really important. I'm going to tie in some new news that came out, and you'll understand the importance of it, and leading to what is called the Psalm 83 war, where the nations that border Israel will be attacking Israel in the very near future, and Egypt is one of those nations. Now, here's a little, and don't worry about, if you're watching at YouTube, don't worry about taking the information down. Once you go to my website, all of this information that I'm reading is posted there. All you have to do is click the link. It'll take you to the news report. But here's a headline today. It says, "Suddenly Israel sees peace asset?" Question mark. I'm going to quote this here. "Suddenly peace has become an asset for Israel, and suddenly Egypt's president Hosni Mubarak has become Israel's best friend. Like a man about to lose a woman, he was abused for years, and only then recognizes her value far too late. Israel is now hunkering down, frightened of what the future will bring. What if the new government in Egypt revokes the peace treaty?" Now, this is a very good question. This is one of the issues that I've brought out in the past. As a matter of fact, I believe I wrote about this yesterday, about the peace process failing and what would happen. And we know from Psalm 83 that these bordering nations around Israel will attack. I believe that the peace process will break down. And as you know, Israel has been calling for peace and safety for a very long time, since 1979. Now here's another report I'm going to show you today. This came out today, Egypt, from the BBC. It says, "Egypt protests, Israel watches anxiously," and there's a good reason for it. It says, the Israelis are watching anxiously as anti-government protests continue in Egypt, one of the country's only friends in the Arab world. Judgment Day for President Hosni Mubarak was the full-page headline, jumping from a Hebrew language newspaper. The article goes on to say that the implications of the regime change in Egypt would be enormous here, and they're definitely going to be enormous for Israel, because God warned us that Egypt was going to be numbered in with those nations who attack Israel, and this hasn't happened yet. It will happen, and this is the reason I believe that the Egypt is now starting to swing towards a new government, and the concern for Israel, as you're going to see here in a second, is the Muslim reign. So it goes on to say, "We are concerned. We are watching this very anxiously," says Dan Gilberman, a former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. This is a very, very tough neighborhood," he says. We are already facing Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the prospect of, God forbid, an Christian fundamentalist Islamic organization taking over in Egypt is obviously not something we can ignore. Now, this is important. When you read this particular article, you'll see here, and again, if you go to my website, you'll see it. It talks about the Hezbollah, Hamas in the Gaza. Now, these are all the areas that you'll see from the Psalm 83. And they are definitely, for example, in Gaza you have the Palestinians, and they are the Phoenicians of the Old Testament. So in the Hezbollah in Lebanon, you have two groups that are actually satellite nations, if you will, of Iran, who hate Israel, and they have called for the destruction of Israel. So you can see why Israel is very, very anxious over this problem. Goes on to say, Mr. Gilman is talking about the Egyptian Islamic movement, the Muslim Brotherhood. Says many analysts who disagree with this description see the Brotherhood as a conservative but more moderate Islamic organization. Now, when you go further down in the article, it says writing on the wall, and I use this terminology quite a bit because the Lord has shown us through His Word that He was going to tell us these things before they actually took place. And this is exactly what we're seeing. It says Israel shares a long border with Egypt, and both have a frontier with the Gaza Strip, where again the PLO and the Hamas and the Hezbollah and all these factions who hate Israel are. That's where their headquarters is. Israel and Egypt have been blockading the Palestinian territory for more than 3 years. The blockade is aimed at weakening the Islamic movement Hamas, which controls Gaza. Hamas is an offshoot of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood. So obviously they're not a conservative group. You could just file through the Google and pull up destroy Israel, and you'll see how many times that these groups have said that they wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the map. Goes on, Israel is worried that if there is a regime change in Egypt, the border with Gaza will be entirely insecure, and it definitely will be. That's a given. President Mubarak is clinging on, but Zaid Mitzvah, the former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, who knows the Egyptian leader well, says the writing is on the wall. He's finished. It's over. And if you watch the news, you would have to agree with this former ambassador that Mubarak is on his way out. There was bloodshed. I was watching the news on this issue up until 12 o'clock this morning. And it was the gunshots and the deaths that are occurring there. It's getting worse, and the reason why is because Mubarak didn't step down. Now, this is very interesting because the paper that came out again today, it says Muslim Brotherhood wants end to the Egypt-Israeli peace deal. I warned about this, and this brings up what Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, where he talked about when they shall call for peace and safety, sudden destruction will come upon them as a woman travail upon or as a child that will come upon a woman, and they shall not escape. So we know that at the time that the peace talks they're calling for peace is the time that destruction is coming. So you're seeing the breakdown of Egypt, and you're seeing these Muslims, the leadership, trying to take hold in Egypt to bring their beliefs, which is we want to destroy Israel to get back East Jerusalem, where their third most holy site is, and near the Dome of the Rock, or at the Dome of the Rock, excuse me. Let me go on and quote this. It says, Egypt's banned Muslim Brotherhood movement has unveiled its plans to scrap a peace treaty with Israel if it comes into power, a deputy leader said in an interview with the NHK TV. So there you have it. You know, the handwriting on the wall really tells us it's very significant that we see what's going to happen before it happens. Now, in the Old Testament, Isaiah 42, I think it's 42:9, that God tells us that He is going to reveal those things before. Let me make sure we have, I believe it is 42:9, but He tells us He's going to reveal the things that have already passed, but He's going to declare new things that haven't come up yet. And these are the things that we're watching today in the news. I mean, obviously, the Psalm 83 war hasn't been fulfilled yet. And when you're starting to see the breakdown of Egypt, and now you're starting to hear that they want to scrap the peace process, and the people who are saying it are the same people who want destruction of Israel, you definitely see the path that we're on, and it is a path that is going to fulfill Bible prophecy. Now, if you scroll down, we're going to get into some other news about the weather events and how these weather events are related to the food and the higher prices in food as it pertains to Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Thank you.